Imagine discovering the happiest news of your life, the kind of news that makes your heart race, fills you with hope, and brings you closer to the future you've always dreamed of. Now, imagine that instead of celebrating, the person you love turns that dream into your worst nightmare. This is a story of one woman's unexpected heartbreak, one she never saw coming. She finds out she's pregnant, and not just with one child, but twins. Two little lives growing inside her, symbols of a future she thought would be full of joy, family, and love. She couldn't wait to tell her husband, believing he'd share in the excitement, that he'd see this as a blessing and a beautiful next chapter for them both. But instead of happiness, his reaction is cold. Her world shatters when his response to this news isn't just dismissive, it's cruel. Without a second thought, he tells her to leave. Not just the room, but the home they'd built together. As if she's nothing to him, he kicks her out, leaving her with a broken heart and no idea of what to do next. Her dreams and security vanish in an instant, replaced by an overwhelming sense of betrayal and abandonment. But what happened next? Well, no one saw it coming. Her story is one of resilience, strength, and an unexpected twist that turns the tables in ways he never imagined. This isn't just a story of loss, it's one of redemption, of finding strength when life seems to have given up on you. Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear is a journey from darkness to empowerment, a story that proves sometimes the worst moments lead to the most powerful transformations. Meet Emily, a woman whose heart was always set on building a warm, loving family. Her life wasn't glamorous or filled with riches, but it was rich in its own way. Emily had worked hard to make a cozy home with her husband, Sam, and she truly believed she'd found her partner for life. For years, she poured her heart and soul into making their life together feel like the family she'd always dreamed of. There was comfort in their routines, joy in shared moments, and a promise of a bright future. Emily adored Sam. He had a quiet strength, and in his eyes, she saw the stability she'd craved all her life. Whenever she was with him, she felt safe, protected. Sam had always seemed like the kind of man who would stand by her side through anything, the sort of partner who would be there to raise a family and build a life together. She trusted him, confided in him, and truly believed they'd grow old together. And that trust felt even more precious as she began to imagine the next chapter in their lives. Emily had long dreamed of becoming a mother, of nurturing and guiding a little one through life. She'd picture the moments that would make up their family story, the late-night feedings, the family outings, and the laughter that would fill their home. She thought she and Sam shared that dream, that he was just as excited as she was to one day hear the pitter-patter of little feet. Then one day, after weeks of feeling uncharacteristically tired and a little off, she decided to take a pregnancy test. The result took her breath away, 2 little lines, and not just any positive result, it was twins. Emily's heart raced, filled with an indescribable joy. The idea of having twins felt like a blessing she hadn't even dared to wish for. In her heart, she knew these babies were going to be the start of an incredible adventure. For days, Emily carefully planned how she'd break the news to Sam, eager to make it special. She imagined his face lighting up with surprise, his eyes filling with the same wonder she felt. She pictured them embracing, laughing, already planning names and thinking about the future they'd build for their children. The thought of that moment kept her giddy with excitement. But as she looked back on their relationship in those moments of quiet excitement, there were certain things she couldn't ignore. Red flags she'd brushed aside in the past started creeping into her mind, though she tried to push them away. Sam could be distant, sometimes cold, in a way that left her feeling confused. He was usually dependable, but there were moments when his warmth seemed to flicker, and he'd become irritable, withdrawn even. At first, Emily had thought it was stress or fatigue, something all relationships go through. She told herself it was just a phase, that Sam would come around. But those subtle shifts in his behavior had begun to add up over the past few months. Emily could recall a few times when he'd been dismissive or snapped at her over small things, and recently, he'd grown more preoccupied. He seemed distracted, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. Emily didn't want to dwell on those moments. She wanted to believe he'd embrace this next step in their lives, that he'd find joy in the arrival of their twins, and that it would bring them closer. As she wrapped up her plans to share the news, she couldn't shake the tiny knot of worry in her stomach. But she chose to focus on the positives, on the love she felt for him and the future she envisioned. For Emily, this news was the beginning of a new life, a journey they'd embark on together as parents. She was ready to give everything to build the family of her dreams, confident that Sam would be right there with her. So, with all the hope in her heart, Emily prepared herself to share the happiest news she'd ever received, certain that this would be a moment of celebration, a memory they'd cherish forever. Little did she know that this news wouldn't bring them closer. It would be the spark that ignited an entirely unexpected series of events, unraveling everything she thought she knew about her husband and their life together. With her heart pounding and a smile she couldn't contain, Emily finally felt ready to share the news with Sam. She'd spent hours thinking about how she'd reveal it, preparing a special dinner and imagining his reaction. As the evening unfolded, she took his hand, looked him in the eyes, and with a voice full of excitement, said, "Sam, we're going to have twins." But the response she anticipated, a smile, maybe a laugh, and certainly an embrace, never came. Instead, his face turned still, his hand grew tense in hers, and he stared at her as if she'd spoken a foreign language. The room filled with silence, an eerie, uncomfortable quiet that gnawed at her anticipation. She watched as his jaw clenched, and instead of joy, something entirely different took over his expression: disappointment, frustration, even anger. "What do you mean, twins?" he finally muttered, his tone sharp and unrecognizable. His gaze was cold, distant, as if the words she'd just spoken were a burden he never wanted. Emily's smile faltered, replaced by a frown of confusion and disbelief. "Yes, twins," she said softly, trying to steady her voice. "Isn't that incredible, Sam? We're going to be parents of not just one, but two babies. I thought you'd be—" But before she could finish, he cut her off. "This isn't what I wanted, Emily," he snapped, his words harsh and void of warmth. "I'm not ready for this. I thought you understood that." Each word felt like a slap, and Emily's heart sank as the reality began to settle in. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. This wasn't the man she thought she knew. How could he be so indifferent? "Sam, we talked about this," she managed, trying to keep her composure. "You said you wanted a family someday. I thought you'd be happy." But Sam shook his head, exhaling sharply. His impatience only grew as he looked around the room, avoiding her gaze. "A family, yes, but not like this, not twins, not now," he shot back, barely able to mask his resentment. "Do you even know what this will mean for us? For me?" His words left her speechless. Emily had expected so much from this moment: an embrace, shared joy, maybe even tears of happiness. Instead, she felt as though the ground had fallen from beneath her. She tried to reach for him, to plead, but his response was icy, final. "I can't do this, Emily. I don't want this kind of life. I need you to leave. Now." Her heart broke as the weight of his words hit her like a wave. Leave? Now? She could barely process it, let alone believe that this was happening. She looked at him, searching for any sign of softness or regret, but all she saw was someone she didn't recognize, a man who seemed almost inconvenienced by her presence, as if she'd suddenly become a stranger in his life. "Sam, please, don't do this," she whispered, voice trembling. But he turned away, shaking his head. "It's over, Emily. Take your things and go." The finality in his tone left no room for argument. Emily stood there, numb and barely able to breathe, feeling as though she were caught in some twisted nightmare she couldn't wake up from. With tears streaming down her face, she gathered what little she could carry, her clothes, a few personal items, and the pregnancy scan she'd been so excited to show him. She glanced back one last time, hoping for some sign, any sign, that he'd change his mind, that he'd see what he was losing. But he didn't look back. He stayed there, unyielding, watching her go with a cold indifference she'd never thought possible. As she stepped outside and into the quiet night, Emily felt more alone than she ever had in her life. The future she'd envisioned, the family she thought she'd build with Sam, all of it crumbled before her eyes. She wandered aimlessly, her mind clouded with disbelief and heartache. The love she'd built her life around had shattered in an instant, and now she was on her own, with nothing but the clothes on her back and the tiny lives growing inside her. Emily spent that night in tears, feeling lost and utterly abandoned. She slept in her car, clutching her belly as she whispered to her unborn children, trying to reassure them even as her own heart broke. She had no one to turn to. The few friends she'd had were mostly mutual friends with Sam, and she couldn't bear the thought of explaining what had happened, of reliving that devastating moment. In those long, lonely hours, the weight of her reality sank in. She was now a mother-to-be with no home, no support, and no plan. Over the next few days, Emily wandered from place to place, seeking temporary shelter. She found herself grappling with emotions she couldn't control: anger, sorrow, fear, and above all, a sense of betrayal so deep it left her feeling hollow. She questioned everything, wondering if she'd somehow missed the signs, if she'd been naive to believe in a man who could so easily discard her and their unborn children. Each day brought new challenges, and with every passing moment, she realized how drastically her life had changed. Her dreams of a cozy nursery, of gentle lullabies, and of a family built on love had been torn away. She had to confront the harsh truth that she would be raising her twins alone, without the support of the man she'd once trusted more than anyone. She struggled to find stability, juggling small jobs to cover basic expenses and sleeping in temporary shelters when she could. Nights were the hardest. As she lay in borrowed beds, staring up at unfamiliar ceilings, she often felt the full weight of her situation pressing down on her. Her once stable life had turned into a series of fleeting moments, each one a reminder of how much she'd lost. But amidst the heartbreak and the uncertainty, Emily found herself reaching for a strength she didn't know she had. For the sake of her unborn twins, she began to pick up the pieces, determined to rebuild her life from scratch. The journey ahead seemed long, and she knew the challenges were far from over. Yet, in the quiet moments when she placed a hand over her growing belly, Emily found a glimmer of hope. She had been abandoned and left to fend for herself, but she wouldn't let her children face the same fate. In the days that followed her husband's betrayal, Emily moved like a ghost through her new, uncertain world. She leaned on what few connections she had, starting with a close friend from college, Sarah, who was one of the few people in her life not directly tied to Sam. When Sarah heard what had happened, she didn't hesitate. She offered Emily a room in her small apartment, a place Emily could finally call a temporary refuge. Sarah's kindness and support gave her the first small spark of hope, a reminder that she wasn't completely alone. Each day, Emily woke up determined to move forward, piece by piece. She reminded herself, this is for the twins. Every time she felt the urge to give in to despair, she would place her hand on her growing belly and feel that familiar, protective surge within her. Her children gave her strength she didn't know she had, propelling her forward through each moment of heartache. Though her world had been shattered, she was gradually piecing herself back together. With a newfound sense of purpose, Emily began exploring her rights. She knew she couldn't let Sam simply walk away with everything they had built together. At Sarah's urging, she met with a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, who specialized in family law. Linda listened intently as Emily recounted the betrayal, her husband's cold reaction, and the cruel dismissal that left her homeless. Emily, Linda said firmly, you have rights here, and you deserve to know the full extent of what's going on. We're going to dig into Sam's actions and uncover every hidden detail. As the investigation into Sam's financial affairs began, Emily braced herself for whatever might come. But she wasn't ready for what Linda uncovered. It turned out that Sam had been hiding far more than a lack of enthusiasm for family life. He had a series of undisclosed debts, dating back years, that Emily had never known about. Linda revealed that Sam had a pattern of reckless financial decisions, and on top of that, he had a significant gambling problem. Linda didn't mince words. Emily, your husband's financial situation is a lot more complicated than you realized. He's been using your family's assets to fund his habits. Hearing this, Emily's emotions were a whirlwind of disbelief and anger. She felt both hurt and betrayed yet again. Not only had he abandoned her when she needed him most, but he had also jeopardized their future. The $500,000 that he took wasn't just savings, it was her safety net, their children's future, everything she had believed would support them as they grew their family together. Determined to take back control, Emily worked with Linda to secure what was legally hers. The legal process was daunting, but she had a sense of purpose now, a reason to keep pushing forward. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her twins and the life they deserved. With each new revelation that Linda brought to light, Emily felt her confidence slowly returning. She wasn't the helpless victim Sam had left behind, she was becoming someone stronger, someone who would never allow herself to be mistreated again. While Emily was focused on rebuilding, Sam's life was rapidly unraveling. Without Emily's support, the mounting pressure of his debts began closing in on him. It was only a matter of time before creditors started calling, demanding payment. His reputation, which he had worked hard to cultivate, took a severe hit. News of his gambling and irresponsible financial behavior spread among his colleagues and friends, leading to a series of setbacks in his career. Former business partners pulled away, unwilling to associate with someone so deeply entrenched in debt and scandal. Emily heard bits and pieces about Sam's troubles through mutual friends and the updates Linda provided. She couldn't deny the satisfaction she felt seeing him face the consequences of his actions. There was a quiet justice in watching the man who had turned his back on her and their unborn children experience the fallout of his own choices. As Sam's world continued to fall apart, Emily's sense of resilience only grew stronger. She used every challenge as fuel, every small victory as a reminder of how far she'd come. Linda's guidance and the support of her friend Sarah reminded her that she had people in her corner, people who cared about her well-being and believed in her strength. The turning point came when Linda finalized a settlement agreement that would return a significant portion of the family savings Sam had taken. Emily's relief was overwhelming, knowing that she now had a financial foundation on which to rebuild. She could envision a future for her twins, one where they could grow up in a stable, loving environment. It was no longer a future built on empty promises, but rather on hard-won resilience and determination. Emily couldn't help but feel empowered. She had taken a life that had been shattered and rebuilt it into something more resilient, something even stronger than she'd imagined. Months had passed since Sam had thrown her out, and Emily had slowly built a life of her own. She was healing, becoming stronger with each day, and forging ahead with a resilience she didn't know she possessed. Just when she'd begun to feel a sense of peace, a message from an unknown number appeared on her phone. It was Sam. The message was simple, but its words carried a weight she wasn't prepared for. "Emily, I need to talk. Please, I'm sorry." There was a rawness to his message that made her pause. Curiosity mixed with caution as she thought of the man who had once been her world and then shattered it. Why would he be reaching out now? Curiosity won, and they agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, a place where they'd once gone together during happier times. When she arrived, she immediately spotted him. The man who sat before her was no longer the confident, seemingly put-together person she remembered. Sam looked worn, almost haunted, his face lined with the stress of a life that had spiraled out of control. His shoulders slumped as if carrying a weight too heavy to bear. Emily felt an unexpected pang of pity mixed with anger. This was the same man who had thrown her out, leaving her to fend for herself. As they sat down, there was an awkward silence, as if neither knew quite where to begin. Sam finally spoke, his voice thick with regret. "Emily, I messed up. I know I did. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to understand. Things haven't been easy for me. Everything has fallen apart. I lost my job, I'm in debt, and I don't know where else to turn." She listened, every word a mix of the familiar and the foreign. This was a man she once loved, who had left her when she was most vulnerable. Now, he was asking for something she had once given freely, her support and understanding. But the person sitting across from him was no longer the Emily who had depended on his love. She was someone who had learned the hard way how to stand on her own. I don't understand, Sam, she began, her voice calm but firm. I don't understand how you could throw me out with nothing. I was carrying your children. I was terrified and alone. You didn't just hurt me, you shattered me. Her words were like stones, steady and weighted. For the first time, she found herself speaking with a confidence she had never felt before. Sam's eyes were downcast, unable to meet her gaze. I know, Emily. I was scared. I felt trapped, overwhelmed. And now I'm paying for it in ways I never imagined. He paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for your forgiveness. Maybe we can try again. Emily looked at him, feeling a strange calm wash over her. The old Emily might have believed him, perhaps even given him another chance. But she had been through too much, survived too much, to be drawn back into the toxic cycle. She had come too far to risk losing herself again. Sam, she said, her tone unwavering, I can't go back to that life. I won't. I don't hate you, but I can't forget what you did. I don't need you anymore, and I certainly don't owe you anything. She could see the sting of her words register in his face, his expression shifting from regret to a sad acceptance. In that moment, Emily realized that this confrontation was not about reuniting or forgiving in the way he wanted. It was about closure, about freeing herself from the weight of their shared past. For the first time, she saw herself not as a victim but as someone who had overcome the worst and emerged stronger. Sam shifted in his seat, as if wrestling with his own turmoil. I never meant for any of this to happen, he said quietly, but there was no fight left in his voice, no expectation that she would change her mind. He knew, perhaps more than anyone, the damage he had done. Emily looked him in the eyes, feeling a wave of peace she hadn't anticipated. I hope you find the answers you're looking for, Sam. But my life is moving forward, without you. I owe that to myself, and I owe it to my children. She stood up, feeling a sense of finality. She was no longer trapped in the shadow of his betrayal. She was free, independent, and in control of her destiny. Sam watched her leave, knowing she wouldn't be coming back. As Emily walked away from that final conversation, she felt the weight of her past lift, like chains that had held her down for far too long. It wasn't just that she had moved on from Sam, it was that she had reclaimed herself, and the realization filled her with a quiet strength. This journey, one she would never have chosen, had led her to a place of resilience she hadn't known she was capable of. The path to this moment had been anything but easy. She had endured betrayal at her most vulnerable, faced days and nights filled with fear and loneliness, and built a new life from what felt like ruins. In her weakest moments, she had found reserves of strength within herself that she'd never known existed, each small step forward bringing her closer to the person she was meant to be. Her heart, once bruised and battered, was now whole and strong, filled with a sense of self-worth that no one could take from her. And now, with her twin babies soon to arrive, she had a new vision for her life, one not tied to anyone else's approval or validation but built entirely on her own choices and dreams. She had always imagined building a family with a partner by her side, but she realized now that she was more than capable of creating a beautiful, loving life for her children on her own. She didn't need someone else to complete her story. She was the author, and she was writing her own future, one that she could be proud of. Emily's journey had taught her many things, but perhaps the greatest lesson was the importance of self-respect and the courage to walk away from situations that no longer served her. She had learned that true strength wasn't found in holding on, but in knowing when to let go and trusting herself to rebuild. Her worth wasn't defined by anyone else's actions or approval, it was something she had discovered within herself. As she prepared to welcome her twins into the world, Emily felt a new sense of purpose, one that transcended her past heartbreak. She was determined to raise her children in an environment of love, resilience, and respect, teaching them the very lessons she had learned the hard way. She wanted them to know that life could be filled with unexpected challenges, but those challenges could also lead to growth, healing, and a renewed sense of self. Emily's story was not just one of survival but of transformation. She had gone from a woman who felt helpless and abandoned to someone who embraced life with open arms, ready for whatever lay ahead. Her heart was filled not with regret, but with gratitude for the person she had become through the trials she had faced. She was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, both for herself and for others who might face similar struggles. In the end, Emily's journey was a testament to the power of resilience, to the strength that lies within every one of us to rise up and rebuild, even when life knocks us down. She had once thought that her world had ended, but now she saw it as a new beginning, a fresh start where she was in control, empowered, and truly free. Her story was a reminder that even when life takes an unexpected and painful turn, we all have the power to keep moving forward, to rebuild, and to find peace within ourselves. Emily's life wasn't defined by her past, but by the courage she found to create a brighter future for herself and her children. If you found Emily's journey inspiring, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories of resilience and empowerment. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of her story resonated with you? And if you're ready for another powerful journey, check out our next video. Thank you for watching.